She found the key inside a chess piece. Not under a floorboard, not in a safe, not anywhere a person would think to look. Inside a bishop, carved from black walnut, sitting untouched on a chessboard no one had played in years. And the moment her fingers closed around it, Emma understood that everything the world believed about her husband was wrong. 3 days. That's how long the marriage lasted before Ethan Carter disappeared. 3 days after the wedding photos went viral, after the tabloids called it the strangest union of the decade, after his own board members smiled for the cameras while quietly calling her a gold digger behind closed doors. Ethan Carter, 34 years old, the man who built one of the largest AI companies on Earth from a garage in a stubborn refusal to quit, was gone. No passport, no phone, not $1 withdrawn from any account he owned. His private jet sat untouched on the runway, its engines cold, as if it had been waiting for a man who was never coming back to it. He hadn't run from anything money could buy back. He had simply vanished. And vanishing, as Emma would soon learn, is not the same thing as running away. The world needed someone to blame, and Emma was standing right there, closest to the wreckage. A school teacher from a town most people couldn't find on a map, suddenly married to a man worth more than entire countries. It didn't make sense to anyone. Not to the reporters camped outside the mansion gates. Cameras aimed at her curtains like she was a fugitive instead of a widow who wasn't even sure she was one. Not to Ethan's business partners, who whispered in boardrooms that she manipulated a grieving, lonely man into signing away his name and his fortune. Not even, for a while, to Emma herself, who spent her nights replaying every conversation she'd ever had with him, searching for a lie she was certain she must have missed. She was questioned for hours at a time, photographed leaving police stations with her coat pulled over her face like something out of a nightmare she hadn't agreed to star in. Humiliated in ways she never imagined possible for someone who, 3 months earlier, had been grading spelling tests in a classroom that smelled like chalk dust and old books, worrying about nothing bigger than whether her students would pass their spring exams. But grief has a strange way of making people careless, and careless people forget to lock every door. It was during a quiet, sleepless night, wandering through a house too large for one person, that Emma noticed the chessboard in Ethan's study, dust on every piece except one. The black bishop, slightly turned, as if someone had picked it up recently and set it back down in a hurry, in the middle of something urgent. She lifted it, felt something rattle inside, small and deliberate, twisted the base until it came loose in her palm. And there it was, an old brass key, small enough to hide in a closed fist, heavy enough to feel like it mattered more than anything else in that enormous house. The key led her beneath the house, through a passage disguised as a wine cellar, past bottles that had never been opened, into a room that didn't exist on any blueprint she'd ever seen. Screens glowing faintly in the dark, filing cabinets locked in triplicate, a wall of hard drives blinking quietly, patiently, as if they'd been waiting for her. And video after video, recorded by Ethan himself, his voice steady even when his hands were shaking just enough for the camera to catch it. He had known. For over a year, he had known that the men closest to him, the men who called themselves his partners, who had stood beside him at product launches and shaken his hand for magazine covers, had been funneling billions through illegal AI contracts, hiding fraud behind patents and shell companies with names designed to mean nothing to anyone who went looking. And when he'd started asking quiet, careful questions, he'd found something far more dangerous than fraud. He'd found out they were planning to remove him, permanently, not through a boardroom vote, but through something no lawyer could undo. So he did the one thing they never expected from a man who had never backed down from anything in his life. He disappeared before they could. But why marry Emma first? That question sat heavier than any of the others. Heavier than the fraud, heavier than the threats, and the answer waited in the final video, dated the night before the wedding. Ethan spoke directly into the camera, and for the first time, His voice cracked in a way the press had never once seen. Years earlier, before the company, before the money, before anyone knew his name, he had broken down on a rainy street outside a small-town diner, stranded, broke, and closer to giving up than he'd ever admitted to anyone. A stranger had helped him, given him coffee, cab fare, and 20 minutes of conversation that asked for nothing in return. That stranger was Emma, and she never even remembered his face. He had spent years searching for the one person who had been kind to him without knowing who he was, without wanting anything from him. When he found her again, quietly, carefully, watching from a distance before he ever said a word, he didn't marry her to save himself. He married her because she was the only person on earth he trusted enough to protect the truth if he never made it back. Emma sat alone in that hidden room for a long time after the video ended, the weight of it settling into her chest like something both terrible and precious, grief and gratitude arriving in the same breath. What followed were months that felt like a different life entirely, clues hidden in places only Ethan would think to hide them. Each one a small test of whether she truly understood him. A locker in a luxury hotel in Zurich, its key taped beneath a drawer only he would have thought to check. A private island registered under a name that meant nothing until she cross-referenced it with an old photograph tucked inside one of his childhood books. A Swiss vault that required a question only 2 people in the world knew the answer to. A question about the color of the umbrella she handed him on that rainy night years before. Each location peeled back another layer of betrayal. Another name added to a growing list of men who had smiled at her in courtrooms while quietly destroying her husband from the inside. There were false leads that cost her weeks she couldn't afford to lose. A partner she trusted for exactly one conversation before realizing, with a cold drop in her stomach, that he was reporting everything back to the board the moment she left the room. Nights in unfamiliar hotel rooms where she wondered if Ethan was even still alive, or if she was simply chasing the last wishes of a man already gone, following a trail that led nowhere but grief. Along the way, she met the people Ethan had trusted enough to leave breadcrumbs with. A retired accountant in Lisbon who had once refused to falsify a single number and paid for it with his career, now living quietly with nothing left to lose and everything left to say. A former assistant in London who had watched the fraud unfold in silence for years, terrified to speak until Emma finally gave her a reason to. Every one of them carried a fragment of the truth, and every one of them had been waiting, sometimes for years, for someone brave enough or desperate enough to come asking the right questions. Emma began to realize she wasn't just chasing her husband anymore. She was becoming the person he'd always believed she could be, someone others were finally willing to trust with something dangerous. There was a moment, somewhere between Lisbon and Geneva, when Emma almost stopped, sitting alone in an airport at 2 a.m, exhausted, frightened, unsure if any of it would matter in the end. She nearly booked a flight home to the quiet, ordinary life she left behind. But she thought of the bishop, of the key, of a man who had trusted her with the truth before he trusted anyone else with his safety, and she stayed. But evidence has a way of becoming undeniable once there is enough of it. Bank records that told a story no lawyer could spin. Recorded confessions from men who thought no one was listening. Falsified contracts with signatures that didn't match. Dates that didn't align. Numbers that told the truth even when the men behind them refused to. Emma didn't hand it to the police first. She handed it to journalists who couldn't be bought. And she watched from a quiet hotel room in Geneva as the story broke wide open, as the same board members who had called her a manipulator were led out of glass office towers in handcuffs, cameras flashing on faces that had once smiled so easily at her humiliation. Ethan came back quietly, no press conference, no dramatic entrance. He simply walked through the mansion's front door on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon, thinner, tired, but alive, his eyes finding her before he'd even fully stepped inside. He found Emma sitting at the chessboard where it had all started, the black bishop resting in her open palm. He hadn't vanished to escape a marriage no one believed in. He had vanished to survive long enough to make sure the truth would outlive him, whether he made it back to tell it himself or not. And Emma understood, finally, sitting across from a man the whole world had given up on. That trust isn't something you give to the people who are easiest to love. It's something you give to the ones who show up when nothing is asked of them. And it's something you keep, quietly, patiently, until the world catches up to what you already knew. Some people search their whole lives for someone who will fight for them. Ethan Carter searched for someone who would simply tell him the truth and hold on to it, carefully, faithfully, even when he wasn't there to ask.